Let me walk you through exporting your video and turning it into an animated GIF. And so this is a project that I created earlier for a flat animation challenge. So hopefully you followed along, and welcome for those of you coming from that. So if you want to animate or export as a GIF, you can't actually do that straight from After Effects. What you first have to do is export a video and then bring that into Photoshop. So I know that's a little tricky, but if you have the Creative Cloud version of After Effects, most of you will also have access to Photoshop, which comes with your Creative Cloud subscription. So first, choose the composition that you want to export and go to Composition, Add to Render Queue. This is how we exported earlier, so you already learned that in a previous lesson, but if you're coming straight to this one, just click this lossless button down there, and we want to change our format to something that's going to be a little bit smaller, so easier to work with. And you can do that by clicking Format Options and changing the video codec from animation to H.264, which is a high-quality QuickTime file. Leave the quality at 100, click OK, click OK. And now to choose where you're going to save it so you can find it after it exports, click on the Output To and then the composition text and just name it and choose the folder where you want to export it to and then click Save. Now to actually render it out, click this render button and that's going to actually export it. So rendering in After Effects means export, basically. So once that's done, we can go to that folder. And we have this QuickTime movie file. So this is just a video though, it's not an animated GIF. And we want to create that animated GIF that we can post online and it loops forever basically. So to do that, we need to open up this movie file in Photoshop. So you can literally just take this video clip and drag it into your Photoshop app. Or you can right click it and say open with Photoshop. So right click and open with. Now this might look different on PCs, but on a Mac you would say open with and then click other and then choose Photoshop. When you open up a video in Photoshop, you're going to have this timeline tab down here. And so this is good if you want to make it shorter. So I exported this entire video, but maybe I want to make it a little shorter. So maybe 4 seconds. So I can take the end of this and drag it in like that. That's your sort of play area, your work area in Photoshop. And now it's only going to export that area. To save as a GIF, go up to File, Export, and I still use the Save for Web Legacy option because it's an easy way to choose your GIF settings or GIF, however you pronounce it. It might take a few seconds to load because it's bringing in all of that video data, so just be patient and let it load. But while we're letting it load, we can see all of our settings on the right. So down below you have, actually this is good to start from below, we might want to change our animation from looping once to looping forever. And then the image size, we typically don't need it to be 1920 by 1080 for online. So maybe we just want to set the width to 1000. And once we do that, nothing happens, but if we click anywhere else, if we click onto another setting, it's going to process that and then it's going to change the image to 1000 pixels wide. And you see that this is linked, so because we set the width to 1000, the height is going to be 563. It automatically decreases that the right amount. While this is processing, you'll notice that the size of the GIF is down here in the bottom left. And so this is 523 kilobytes, which is pretty small, which is good. You definitely want somewhere below 1 megabyte if possible. Below 2 is even better. And so if your animation is too big, you can either change the size of the canvas or you can change the quality up here. So here you have your GIF settings, and you can also from here, this menu, you can change it to JPEG, PNG, and if you didn't, actually the thing is you should change this to GIF. That's the first thing you have to save it as or choose. It might have been on JPEG, so make sure you change that to GIF. And then you can play around with these settings. The color setting is an important one to look at because basically what this is doing is allowing a certain amount of colors to be in your image. Because this animation we created has very few colors, we can actually drop this down and it will still look good because literally there's only like 10 or so colors in this from the background to the cabin colors. So if we drop this down to 32, It's going to process it again, but it still looks pretty good. You get a little bit of that animated GIF pixelation in there, but the size of the GIF also decrease, which is nice. So this is one thing that you can do it increases the quality, but it also increases the size. So you have to kind of balance what you want. So if you want it to be really small, maybe choose something that's a little bit lower. You can also change the dither percentage. Dropping it down a lot, you'll see it kind of decreases. Depending on what your video looks like, it will decrease the blending of the colors or increase. If you're making an animated GIF of a video clip, this will look a lot different than this sort of flat animation. To preview how this is going to look, just click this preview button, and it's going to open up your web browser and show you what this looks like. Now, I actually realized that once I changed these settings, it changed the looping options back to once. So let's check forever, and now preview again. Nice. So that's looking pretty darn good. But with only 8 or 16 colors, you see that we don't get the difference in the color of the hills and the trees and this path up here. So I'm going to increase the colors. I think actually 256 is fine because under 1 megabyte is perfectly fine with me. And dithering, I want to set back to 88%. So now let's preview this. Now that looks pretty good, and it's looping infinitely. So once we're happy with all of those settings, click Save. It's going to ask you where you want to save it. Set your settings and your name and your folder and click Save. Now you can take this animation and upload it to really any website. So if you're watching this course on Udemy, wherever you're watching it, please share your own animation with us as this animated GIF. Cool. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you in another lesson.